Hi guys, and welcome back to the tutorial series on After Effects and compositing. Um, this is video 2, so if you haven't seen 1, go back and watch that. Today I'm just going to be talking about how to organize your project and your files, and then making your first After Effects project and composition and rendering it out. So let's jump right in. I am going to just hop into Finder here and show you how I like to organize things. I have a projects folder, which then I've made one for this workshop project, and I've given it the tag 2006. That's because it's 2020, and this is the 6th project I've been working on. All right, so last year would have been 1906 if that was the 6th. And then in my project folder, I have an AE folder, which is for After Effects projects. And I have the first one here, which I use to make some of those graphics in the presentation, and it's called 2006 Blend Modes version 1. So I definitely recommend, using a versioning system, a name convention of your own. For me, I like to have the tag of the project number in there, just so that I know if that file somehow gets disconnected, I can sort of link it back in. Something descriptive in the middle, and then just the version number. It's tempting to say this is going to be the only version, but realistically that's not the case. Same thing with trying to name it something like final. Never do that. Just keep going until the final version is version 32 or whatever. I would expect something like that, like 32 to 50 versions is pretty common. Okay, so now you also have an assets folder, I do, and I create subfolders in here, footage, images. The Zoom recordings are going in here too, so workshop 1 is there. And then I might create other folders like fonts, artwork, imagery, well, depending on what kind of assets we have, audio, for example. Those all go in here. And then there's a renders folder, which this is where I put the output of all of the work that I do in the different projects. Like here we have Blend Modes version 1, and these are the 4 images that I made. You'll recognize those. And then the last folder in here is review, which I would normally put the date and then something, an output that I want somebody else to look at or that I think could be final, So let's say you have a composite and you've rendered it out to renders, and then you make an MP4 out of it, and that would go in review. And then your creative director, your director, whoever is in charge of approving a project would take a look at it and say either that's great, let's send it out, or you need to make these 3 changes, go back, give me a new version. Rinse, repeat. If you have any other pieces of software that you're using, this is also where I'd make those folders. So let's like Premiere would go in here. And if you have a lot of stuff going on, I would usually also split up renders into AE, Premiere, etc. For this project, I know I'm only going to be using After Effects, so I didn't bother with that. But it's a good thing to think about. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you're thinking about your folder structure, and so that other people on your team or even yourself down the line, if you forget about stuff, I seriously cannot emphasize enough how much time organizing my project well and consistently has just saved me from, oh man, hours, days of work, definitely. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this folder. Okay, now that we have everything organized, let's get some assets for our project today. I am kind of interested in doing like mountains. Let's see. Let me get some images of mountains. Hopefully my internet is working. Okay, good. Okay. So let's take one of these pictures. No, this is not quite what I'm looking for. You know, maybe something, let's mix it up a little bit. I think I want like a plateau. This is a good one. Okay, so I'm gonna take this image and I'm just gonna download this, and I'm gonna like comp in a sunset in the background. This is gonna be really basic, but it'll be good. It'll be a good project for us to just, you know, a P image. Wait, this will be a good starting project for us. Is just like comping in maybe this one. It didn't have, I want something that's a JPEG or something that we know. This is good. This is good. JPEG. Plateau. Okay. Awesome. We got a plateau, and let's get a sunset too. Sunset, and you should, you know, if you're following along, get whatever you want to comp together. I like this sunset, so I'm going to get that one. What a weird thing. Maybe not. It's a weird format. Again, you know, that may be just like a Google Images thing. It's usually better to try and grab from like a free stock imagery website, but I was trying to go quickly. Seems like that bit me. Okay, here we go. Sunset.jpg. Okay, so now I have my two images saved to my desktop. I can close this out. Let's take a look. I've got my project here, and I will just move these into assets, images. Oh, there's some stuff in there already from a previous attempt to do this. Delete those just so it's not confusing. Here we go. Okay. All right, sounds good. So we've got our assets, our plateau and our sunset. That looks great. Now let's comp them together. It's gonna look weird. You know, these images definitely don't line up with each other that well, but I'll just show you real quick how I would do this. So let's finally get into After Effects now that we have everything we need. Let's launch it up. And the first thing that we're gonna do is, again, save our project with our naming. Okay. All right, so here, when you launch After Effects, you're gonna see this menu, which is gonna give you recent projects, but for now, we're just gonna do a new project. And right away, first thing, save it, AE, and I'm just gonna use this as a template, okay. Let's call this video 2. Awesome. So now we have our video 2 project. Let's take a look at the main panel. So the first one we want to look at is this project panel over here. Right now we have nothing going on. So let's bring in our images, double click in this area like that, and it'll open up the browser. You can go to your assets and import whatever you downloaded for yours. Let's see, okay. So now I have my sunset and my plateau. This right here is basically a mini folder structure. It's the same as the file folders that your computer has. So first thing that we want to do, of course, is get organized, because we all know how important that is. So I'm going to name this assets and put these guys in there. And now let's make our first composition. I want to start with the background, because that is the the foreground in this case, because that is the size of the composition I want. So I'll just grab this image, and I can either drag it here to make a new composition, but for now I'm going to grab it onto this little composition icon in the bottom of the project thing. Side note, you'll notice that right here it says 8-bit per color. Maybe, I don't know if it's, oh, project color, 8-bit project color. So we're working 8-bit. These are JPEGs, so they're 8-bit images, so there's no real reason to increase it. But if we were working with, you know, like TIFFs that were 16-bit or AXRs, we might want to change that just to get our effects looking a lot better. So now I just moved this comp out of assets, and I am going to pre-comp everything. So let me make a new folder called pre-comps. A pre-comp is, in After Effects, you have a comp which is made up of layers, and then those layers can actually be comps themselves. So your final comp will usually have sub-comps or pre-comps inside of it as the layers. So I'm going to use this as a pre-comp, and actually let's pre-comp the sunset too. So I'll just make another one. You see it pops up, and let's move that to pre-comps. Okay, now that we have that, I'm actually going to make one more plateau, and I'm going to rename this to just comp, and this will be our actual output. That's what we're really going to use. So again, render, I'm gonna make a render folder and I'm gonna put that in there. So this is nice and organized. Someone comes in here and they're gonna like, oh yeah, okay, this is where I look first, and then these are where the assets are. I can click through, right? So let's open up the comp. We can see it's already open. In the composition viewer here, we just have this one layer with the plateau. This is the timeline down here, and this is the layer editor to the left of it. And we're just gonna delete that for now. And instead of using the actual image, let's use our pre-comp plateau. There we go. And let's get our sunset in there too, underneath it. So sometimes it glitches out and shows black on my computer, but hopefully it doesn't do that on yours. Okay, so here we go. We've got our plateau. The composition is the right size. If we select it, we can see it's 750 by 450. If we want to change that, we can right-click on the comp and go to the settings here to change the width, height, and the frame rate. This is all good for now, so I'll just continue on. We can look in our layer list, and there's a ton of stuff going on here. I want you to pay attention to 3 main areas for now: the source name section, the mode section, and this visibility section. So obviously these are just the names of the comps. And then mode here, we have our blend modes that we talked about, right? So why don't we try out add? And we can see, yes, there's a little bit of brightness where that sunset image is. And of course, if we change it to multiply, we know that's going to darken it, right? Because we did our math. Okay. All right. Now, what I want to do is, if you remember in the theory class, we talked a lot about the alpha channel, right? And how that teaches us how to use transparency, right? That tells the computer what parts of the image to cut out and how to combine it. We're going to use a mask to draw our own, basically. So if I select the plateau and then I go up here, and this is the toolbar up here, I'm gonna pick the pen tool right here, and I've got my little pen symbol. I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to quickly outline the plateau here. And this is going to be really rough. I'm not going for perfection at this point. This is just an introduction to using After Effects. So nothing too, serious. Oh, there we go. The mask is now drawn, and you can see it's now using this outline that we drew as an alpha channel to sort of, show us what part is transparent, what part isn't, but it's backwards because, right, we want to comp the sky in there, not the sky of this. So what we can do is if we go to our layer, our plateau layer, and we M, our mask shows up, and we can take this path and change it from add to subtract. There we go. Oh, that's a terrible matte line. I would be in so much trouble if this was a real comp. Okay, I'm gonna just take the whole thing, just lower it down a little bit, pinch some of this in. I would much rather have the rock be cut off than be seeing some of that blue sky. Okay. There we go. All right, looks a little funky. You know, you can get way more precise with this, but this is just for now. So now we've got it cut out the way we wanted, but that sunset is too small. So let's figure out how to make it bigger. If you just grab the sunset layer, we can twirl down this little arrow on the side here, and it shows us more all of these attributes that the thing has, right? And we're gonna wanna increase the scale, but instead of doing it that way, I'm just gonna hit S, and the scale comes up, right? And there's S, R, T for opacity, and P for position are some of the most common ones that you use, right? So hit S, and I'm gonna scale this guy up, and I think that's just my computer not working properly. There we go. And I think it needs to be way bigger, actually, right? Do we want these cities in the background? Yeah, I mean, why not? Maybe I'll fake it a little this way and scale it up some more. So I just clicked and dragged it in the viewport. Something like that. Okay. Now we have our new background. So that's great. You know, that's first comp. We've done something. But why don't we improve this a little bit? And in the meantime, I can actually show you how to mess around with this a little bit more. So over here on the right, we have several panels. Right now we're in the effects and presets panel. Here's where we can apply some more interesting things. I'm going to go to curves, which is the color correction, one of the color correction standards. And this little 32 here, by the way, is saying that it's meant for 32-bit. But going down isn't going to be an issue for us. So I'm just gonna pop this in, and I'm gonna put it on the plateau. And now I have this little curve control, which lets me kind of just manually tweak the color by grabbing these lines and shifting them all over the place. It looks a little crazy at first, but once you sort of understand how it works, it's pretty nice to use. So I just made the colors a little bit darker, a little more saturated. I think I want to take a little bit of this redness out too. It's pretty red. And then the green can come down. And there we go. It's a lot more of purple, and it looks just a little more like it's, you know, in the right lighting. You know, we can actually come up to this effect, and we can turn it off and on, and you can see, yeah, I think we've improved it, right? A little less fake, still pretty fake. You can do better. Take some time, you know, mess around. Look through some of these other effects, like maybe put on a distortion, like a bulge warp on your plateau. All the effects come up in this effects controls panel, which should be right next to the project panel. You can just, you know, whoa, look what's going on. That's actually kind of fun. I like that. I'm gonna leave that. Cool. So I think you have some good stuff to mess around with at this point. Why don't I'm gonna add one last layer in here. So if you right click or control click, depending on what you're on, go to new, all sorts of options here in the After Effects menu, and we can do text, which, since this is now our rock band poster, I think I would like to add something. I'm just gonna type, click here. There we go. It is coming up. This is too big, but we have this little character menu over here. So I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna bring down the size, and maybe I want it to be all caps. So I'm gonna retype this. Rock. Okay. I'm actually going to shrink it more. And I know I'm not talking much about this at this point, but I'm basically just using those commands and tweaking this menu until I get something that I really want. I can thicken this up a lot too. I'm gonna make it bold. Yeah, bold. Bold's good. And then I want it to be white, I think, instead of black. So if I go up to here, there's a little eyedropper set to white. Still doesn't look right to me. So I'm gonna click on the color. I'm gonna do like a little bit of an almost like an eggshell. That's gross. Well, you get the point. Mess around with this a little bit. You may not want it exactly right, white. That looks okay. And I'm gonna apply that same bend modifier to this. So if I go to my plateau and I go to my effect controls, top left here, and I grab this bulge, just copy it, select my rock text and just paste it, boom. That's kind of fun. There you go. Now I've got my rock band poster. And let's export this out. Now that we have our image, you can export this. You have to export this through a panel called the render queue, which is by default in this bottom area here. Yeah, I just clicked on it. The best way to get something in here is to have that comp selected and then go to composition. Actually, you would do file. No, it is composition. Composition add to render queue. There it is. That's great, but this defaults to being a video. For this, we just want a single frame. So we'll go composition, save frame as file. And this adds a single frame to your render queue. And I'm going to pick renders, make a new folder, call it the name of this file, 2006 video 2, version 1. And I'm just going to save it as, let's save it as that for now. Let's change this output. So now we have an item in our render queue here, right? It's a Photoshop file. We don't want that. Let's click here and it brings up the settings for the output module. We're going to change it to JPEG. That's great. Okay, that's all we need to do. And you can save presets in here. I actually have one of those saved with JPEG, but if you just say make template, then you can save the settings that you put here. The same over here. We're going to output it to not comp 000, but just comp. Great. This looks right. Everything looks good to go to me. So I'm just going to hit render. We get a nice little chime. Let's look in our folder. And there we go. there's our rock poster or our album cover or whatever you want it to be. Okay, so I think that gives you guys a lot to work with. Get into After Effects. I would say for this video, what you want to do is take some time, dig in here, look through some different effects, maybe look up lists of fun effects to try in After Effects. There are a ton of effects and presets in here. A lot of them aren't that good, but a few are really incredible and very powerful. Other things to do are, try different blend modes, mess around, see what maybe you want to use. There's so many different options here. So now's your time. Mess around with After Effects. Click around in here, make comps, make layers, post up in the Slack channel any of your creations. Just, make something. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be nice, but just try to have fun with it. Put some together, render it out, and post it. I'd love to see what you guys do. In our next video, we'll be talking a little bit more about how to actually do a visual effect instead of just getting acquainted. So look forward to that, and I'll see you guys in the Slack.